Good morning. There are moments in life when the walls around us feel too high, too thick, too impossible to break. Moments when life seems to whisper, "You're not enough." And for the longest time, we believe it. We believe we are confined by circumstances, by limitations, by the labels that society throws at us. But let me tell you something today. We are not here to live a life of confinement. We are here to rise with grace, with courage, and above all, with purpose. Barriers, they come in many forms. Some are visible, physical, societal, cultural, and some are the invisible chains we carry within: fear, doubt, guilt, shame. The real battle is not with the outside world, but with the voices inside that say, "You can't." But what if, just for a moment, you could silence that voice? What if you could see yourself not as broken, but as becoming? Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen a bridge built without effort, without struggle? Every bridge must first touch the edge of emptiness. It must reach across fear, doubt, distance, and still it stretches forward. Piece by piece, it connects what was once impossible to cross. That's what we are meant to do. When you choose compassion over judgment, you are building a bridge. When you choose hope over despair, you are breaking a barrier. When you reach out to someone different and say, "You matter," you are creating change. We don't need perfection to change the world. We need honesty. We need kindness. We need people who have been through storms and still choose to dance in the rain. So if you feel like your life is too damaged, too different, too difficult, remember this. Sometimes the cracks in us aren't signs of weakness. They are the very places where the light gets in. You are not defined by what you've lost. You are defined by what you choose to do with what's left. Let us be the generation that doesn't just talk about change, but embodies it. Let us be the voices that echo through barriers, the hands that build bridges where none existed. Because at the end of the day, it's not the walls we build to protect ourselves that matter, it's the bridges we build to reach each other. Barriers, the word alone suggests something solid, immovable, and external, a wall standing between us and the life we wish to live. For most of us, when we think about the obstacles in our lives, we instinctively look outward. We point to circumstances, environments, and even people. We talk about how society holds us back, how culture has expectations that suffocate us, how opportunities are scarce, or how the system is flawed. And yes, these things are real. They exist. But often, the biggest, heaviest, most stubborn barriers are not the ones out there. They are the ones within: fear, doubt, the belief that we are not enough. These are the barriers that no one else sees, and yet they shape everything. They decide how far we go, how much we give ourselves permission to dream, to try, to live fully. And the most painful truth is that these internal barriers are often inherited, passed down through words we heard as children, through the silent lessons society teaches us, or through the moments life broke us and we never really healed. Fear is powerful. It dresses itself in logic, in caution, even in care. It says, "Don't try, you'll fail." It says, "Stay where you are, it's safe." It says, "What will people think?" And at first we listen because fear feels protective. But soon it becomes a cage, a soft, invisible one, but a cage nonetheless. Fear stops us from using our voice. It makes us settle for less than what we deserve. It convinces us that dreaming is dangerous. Then comes doubt. Doubt is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, persistent. Doubt is the voice that creeps in after we make a decision and says, "Was that really the right choice?" It's the feeling in our chest when we stand on the edge of a new opportunity, but somehow convince ourselves that someone else is more qualified, more talented, more worthy. Doubt doesn't scream, it whispers. And somehow, those whispers feel heavier than shouts. And finally, self-limitation. It's the result of living too long with fear and doubt. It's when we start building our lives not based on what's possible, but based on what we think we're allowed. We stop asking, "What if I could?" and begin to say, "This is just the way it is." We shrink. We make ourselves small to fit into spaces we were never meant to belong in. We adjust to people's expectations of us until we no longer recognize our own. The saddest part is that the world often reinforces these inner barriers. We celebrate perfection. We applaud confidence, but we don't talk enough about the courage it takes just to try when your own mind is telling you to quit. We reward outcomes, not effort, and so people walk around hiding their fears, masking their doubts, pretending they have it all together. But inside, many are crumbling. To break these barriers, we first have to acknowledge they exist. We have to sit with the discomfort of knowing that the biggest challenge is not what is happening to us, but what is happening within us. And that's not an easy truth. It's far easier to blame the world than to confront the parts of ourselves that need healing. But nothing changes until we do. No one wakes up fearless. Courage isn't a trait, it's a decision. A choice we make again and again, despite the fear. The people we admire for their strength, their resilience, their success, they're not fearless. They've just learned to move forward with the fear. They've learned to recognize doubt, but not give it power. They've felt the weight of limitation, but decided they're not going to live by someone else's script. It starts with awareness, paying attention to the voice in your head that tells you to play small, noticing when you hold yourself back, not because you can't do something, but because you're afraid of being judged or failing, or simply not being good enough. Once you see the pattern, you can begin to interrupt it. Sometimes the first step is simply saying, "This is fear, and I feel it, but I'm not going to let it decide for me today." It also means being kinder to ourselves. Fear and doubt feed off shame. The more we criticize ourselves for feeling weak, the weaker we feel. But when we begin to understand that fear is a natural part of being human, it loses some of its power. We can say to ourselves, "Yes, I'm scared and that's okay. I can still move." And support matters. Breaking internal barriers doesn't mean doing it alone. It means surrounding yourself with people who remind you of your strength when you forget. People who challenge your limited beliefs, who see the light in you even when you only see darkness. But most of all, it means being that person for yourself, becoming your own encourager, learning to speak to yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a friend. Sometimes internal barriers are deep. They come from wounds that haven't healed, from trauma that shaped the way we see the world and ourselves. And in those cases, breaking barriers isn't a one-time act. It's a journey one that requires patience, forgiveness, and courage. It might mean seeking help. It might mean revisiting painful memories, asking hard questions, or sitting in uncomfortable emotions. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. When we begin to dismantle the barriers within us, the world around us begins to shift too. We start showing up differently. We speak more boldly. We try more bravely. We stop asking for permission to exist fully, and instead, we choose to exist fully. Because the truth is, the life we want, the dreams we hold, they don't require us to be perfect. They require us to be real, to be willing to face ourselves with honesty and say, "I've been afraid. I've doubted myself, but I'm still here and I'm still trying." And that is where transformation begins. Not in the absence of fear or doubt, but in our refusal to let them define us. Bridges don't appear overnight. They are built, piece by piece, through labor, through intention, through courage, and the same is true for human connection. Building bridges between people, communities, hearts, it takes empathy, resilience, and a willingness to reach across difference. It requires us to go beyond ourselves and into the sometimes unfamiliar, often uncomfortable space of another's reality. Yet it is in that space where something beautiful happens: understanding, healing, and unity. Empathy is the first beam of the bridge. It is the decision to look beyond our own experiences and feel what someone else might be feeling. It is the act of listening not just to respond, but to truly understand. In a world that moves fast and shouts loud, empathy is a quiet rebellion. It says, "I see you, I hear you. I may not know your story, but I am willing to sit beside it." Empathy doesn't require us to have lived someone else's life. It simply asks us to keep our hearts open, to stop assuming we know what others are going through and start making space for their truth. Whether it's a colleague struggling in silence, a stranger on the street, or someone whose background is completely different from our own, empathy is what humanizes us. It is what allows us to look into another's eyes and see not a threat, not a label, not a category, but a person. But empathy alone is not enough. Bridges also require resilience, because reaching out can be painful. Misunderstandings will happen. Not every hand we extend will be taken. Not every story we listen to will be easy to hear. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. Resilience in bridge building is about staying in the process even when it's hard. It's about choosing connection over comfort. Sometimes we begin to build a bridge and we realize there's anger on the other side. Sometimes there's mistrust or wounds we didn't cause but are asked to witness, and that can feel unfair. But resilience means we stay anyway. We keep showing up. We hold space without needing to control or fix. We recognize that our job is not to build perfect bridges, but to build honest ones even if they take time. There is also a kind of vulnerability required in building bridges. It's easier to stay guarded. It's safer to surround ourselves with people who look like us, think like us, speak like us. But safety can become a prison if it stops us from growing. When we reach out across difference, whether it's cultural, ideological, generational, we open ourselves to being changed. That's what vulnerability does. It creates room not just for others to enter our world, but for us to enter theirs. This doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. Bridge building is not about uniformity. It's not about erasing differences, it's about honoring them. It's about saying, even if we stand on opposite ends of the river, there is value in finding a way to meet in the middle. That middle ground isn't compromise, it's connection. And connection is a powerful thing. It is what brings people back from the edge. It is what softens anger, heals division, and reminds us that no matter how different our lives may be, we are still bound by the same human need, to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. Sometimes bridges are built with words. A conversation that begins with curiosity instead of judgment. A question asked with sincerity. A story shared without shame. Words can be bricks, or they can be beams. The way we speak to each other matters. The tone we use, the assumptions we carry, the patience we bring, all of it builds or breaks the bridge. Other times, bridges are built through actions, a hand extended, a barrier removed, an apology made, even small acts checking in on someone, offering help, choosing kindness over sarcasm. These are all gestures that say, I see our shared humanity, and I want to honor it. Empathy and resilience must also be accompanied by humility. We have to be willing to admit when we are wrong, to learn, unlearn, and relearn. We must recognize that our perspective is limited, shaped by our experiences and privileges. Building bridges requires us to step outside the certainty of our own lens and say, maybe there's another way to see this. Maybe there's more I need to understand. Sometimes the hardest bridges to build are the ones closest to us, with family members who hurt us, with friends we grew apart from, with people we once loved but no longer understand. These bridges are fragile, but they are not impossible. They require courage, the kind that chooses connection even when pride tempts us to turn away. They require forgiveness, not necessarily forgetting, but releasing the weight we carry so we can walk freely across the divide. There are also bridges we must build within ourselves, between the parts we show and the parts we hide, between our fears and our dreams, between who we've been and who we're becoming. These internal bridges are just as important because we cannot connect deeply with others if we are at war with ourselves. When we bring wholeness to our own hearts, we become safer places for others to land. The world teaches us to build walls, to protect, to separate, to defend. But what if we taught ourselves to build bridges instead? What if we redefined strength not as the ability to stand alone, but as the courage to reach out? What if we saw vulnerability not as weakness, but as the gateway to belonging? It's easy to dehumanize those we don't know. It's easy to judge what we don't understand. But every person has a story, and every story matters. When we build bridges, we say, "Your story belongs." And in doing so, we make the world a little softer, a little kinder, a little more whole. We won't always get it right. We'll make mistakes, say the wrong thing, miss the mark. But the point is not perfection, it's intention. The willingness to try again, to keep building, even when the river is wide and the other side feels far away. Because the moment we choose to see someone not as them, but as us, something shifts, a gap is closed, a bridge is born. Imperfection is often seen as something to hide, something to fix, something to be ashamed of. From the earliest moments of our lives, we are taught to strive for perfection in how we look, how we speak, how we perform, how we present ourselves to the world. We are conditioned to believe that flaws make us unworthy, that mistakes make us failures, and that any crack in the surface is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, imperfection is not only natural, it is necessary. It is not our weakness, but the place where growth truly begins. We live in a world obsessed with polished images. Social media is filled with curated lives and filtered realities. We scroll through photos and stories that seem flawless, and somewhere in the back of our minds, we begin to believe that we are the only ones struggling. We start comparing our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. We see our pain, our scars, our uncertainties, and we feel alone in them. But what we don't often see are the silent battles behind the smiles, the tears behind the strength, the imperfections that make each person's story real and meaningful. The problem isn't that we are imperfect. The problem is that we are taught to fear our imperfections. We are taught to see them as proof that we are not enough. But imperfection does not mean brokenness. It means humanity. It means we are living, breathing beings who are constantly learning, adapting, and becoming. The cracks we carry are not signs of failure, they are evidence of the journey. Growth is not born in comfort. It's not born in perfection. Growth happens in the messiness, in the moments when we fall, get up, and try again. It happens in the times we admit we don't have all the answers and choose to keep searching anyway. It happens when we allow ourselves to be seen, not as flawless, but as real. That's where transformation begins, not in pretending, but in embracing the truth of who we are. There is a kind of beauty that only exists in imperfection. It is the beauty of the handmade, the lived-in, the weathered, the honest. Think of a piece of pottery smooth, symmetrical, perfect. Now think of one that's chipped, that bears the marks of fire, the fingerprints of its maker, the evidence of time. Which one tells a story, which one holds history, the same is true of people. Our imperfections tell the story of where we've been, what we've survived, and who we've become. When we stop chasing perfection and start embracing authenticity, something powerful shifts. We begin to relate to others more deeply. We become more compassionate not just toward them, but toward ourselves. We no longer need to prove our worth. We begin to live from it. We stop seeing mistakes as something to fear, and instead view them as steps in the path of becoming. This doesn't mean we stop striving. It doesn't mean we settle or give up on our goals. But it means we recognize that growth is not linear. It means we accept that setbacks, failures, and flaws are part of the process. The tree does not grow in a straight line. The river does not flow without bends, neither do we. Every twist in the path is shaping us, preparing us, refining us. There's a Japanese art form called kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with gold. Instead of hiding the cracks, they are filled with something beautiful. The philosophy behind it is simple. The object is more beautiful for having been broken. What if we saw ourselves the same way? What if the parts of us we try so hard to hide were actually the places where our strength shines through? The truth is, we don't connect with perfection. We connect with vulnerability, with honesty. with the shared experience of being human. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we give others permission to do the same. We become safer to be around, more approachable, more real. In a world full of masks, realness is rare and it's powerful. Imperfection also teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are always growing, always learning. No matter how much we know, there is always more to understand. No matter how far we've come, there is always room to evolve. And that's a good thing, because it means we are not finished, we are still becoming. The fear of imperfection often holds us back. We don't speak up because we fear saying the wrong thing. We don't try something new because we're afraid of failing. We don't pursue our dreams because we think we're not ready. But readiness is a myth. Perfection is a lie. The most courageous people are not the ones who have it all figured out. They are the ones who show up, flawed and fearful, and try anyway. We must unlearn the belief that imperfection makes us less. In truth, it makes us more. It makes us real, relatable, and resilient. It opens the door to deeper relationships, richer experiences, and a fuller life. It teaches us to value progress over perfection, learning over knowing, presence over performance, and perhaps most importantly, embracing imperfection helps us heal. Because when we stop expecting ourselves to be perfect, we stop punishing ourselves for not being so. We stop carrying shame like a second skin. We begin to forgive ourselves for the mistakes we made when we didn't know better. We begin to accept the parts of our story that once felt too painful to face. Healing doesn't happen through denial. It happens through acceptance, through looking at our imperfections not with judgment, but with compassion. Through realizing that we are not meant to be polished, we are meant to be whole. And wholeness includes the parts that hurt, the parts that wobble, the parts that are still learning how to stand. To grow, we must be willing to begin even if we're not ready, even if it's messy, even if it doesn't look like what we imagine. We must be willing to be bad at something before we're good. We must be willing to fall short, to get up again, and to keep walking, because every stumble is a lesson. Every imperfection is a teacher. Every scar is a reminder that we've lived. In a world that rewards perfection, choosing to embrace imperfection is radical. It is a declaration that we are enough as we are, that we can strive for excellence without sacrificing authenticity, that we can pursue growth without denying our humanity, that we can love ourselves not despite our flaws, but including them. There are moments in life when pain becomes louder than purpose, when the weight of what we carry feels heavier than the reason we started carrying it, when setbacks, failures, disappointments, and heartbreaks begin to blur our vision, and we forget why we even began the journey. These moments are real, they are raw, they test us. But they are also the moments that ask us the most important question of all. Will you let the pain define you, or will you choose to let your purpose lead you? Pain is an inevitable part of life. No one escapes it. It wears many faces: loss, rejection, betrayal, failure, illness, injustice. Sometimes it enters loudly, shattering everything in its path. Sometimes it slips in quietly, settling into our bones without us even realizing. And while pain can break us, it also has the power to awaken us. It can shake us out of our illusions and force us to confront what truly matters, but only if we let it. Because pain, when left unattended, doesn't just hurt, it hardens. It builds walls. It convinces us that retreating is safer than risking, that silence is easier than speaking, that numbness is better than feeling. And when that happens, we start to lose ourselves. We start to build a life that is more about avoiding pain than pursuing meaning. We shrink, we settle, we survive, but we don't live. That's where purpose comes in. Purpose is not a job title. It's not fame, wealth, or success. Purpose is that quiet force within us that whispers, even in our darkest hour, there's something more. It's the reason we rise again after falling. The reason we keep giving, loving, creating, even when the world has tried to convince us to stop. Purpose is not always loud. It's not always clear, but it is always there, waiting for us to remember it. Choosing purpose over pain does not mean ignoring what hurts. It means honoring our pain without allowing it to be the author of our story. It means asking, "What is this pain trying to teach me?" and listening deeply for the answer. Sometimes pain reveals what we truly value. Sometimes it strips away the superficial to show us what's real. And sometimes it simply reminds us of our strength. Purpose gives pain direction. Without it, pain is just suffering. With it, pain becomes fuel. It becomes the fire that forges resilience, the pressure that shapes character, the wound that opens the door to empathy. Some of the most powerful people in the world, not powerful in status, but powerful in spirit, are those who have taken their pain and turned it into purpose. They've allowed their experiences to deepen them rather than define them. But that choice is never easy. It requires us to sit with our pain, to face it, to ask hard questions. It requires courage, the kind of courage that doesn't look like grand gestures, but like showing up to your own life when it feels like everything is falling apart. It looks like getting out of bed when your heart is heavy, like making one more phone call after hearing no 100 times, like extending kindness when you're barely holding yourself together. Purpose is often born in the places we least expect. In the hospital bed, in the job loss, in the heartbreak, in the silence of starting over. These aren't the places we choose, but they are often the places where life shapes us the most. Because in those moments we are forced to look inward. We begin to ask, who am I really? What matters most? What do I want to leave behind? And from those questions, purpose begins to emerge. It doesn't always come as a lightning bolt. Sometimes it comes in fragments, a conversation that stirs something in you, a moment of stillness where you hear your own voice again, a sudden pull towards something that feels meaningful. Purpose reveals itself in layers as we walk through both the joy and the ache of life. And often it changes. As we grow, as we heal, as we become more honest with ourselves, our purpose evolves, but we must be willing to follow it, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it leads us down a path that looks different from what others expect. Choosing purpose means honoring the deeper call, the one that may not bring applause or recognition, but brings peace. It means trading the comfort of the known for the truth of what sets your soul on fire. Purpose is not about being fearless. It's about moving forward even while you're scared. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting that the next step will appear once you take the first one. And it's not about never failing. It's about rising every time you do. Pain says you can't. Purpose says try anyway. Pain says why bother. Purpose says because it matters. Living with purpose doesn't mean life becomes easier, but it does become richer, more meaningful. When we are aligned with our purpose, even our struggles carry weight. Even our wounds carry wisdom. We begin to see our scars not as something to hide, but as something to share, reminders that healing is possible, that strength can be born from suffering. Purpose connects us to others, because when we choose to live beyond our pain, we begin to see others through a different lens. We recognize their struggle in ours, we soften, we listen more, we show up with compassion instead of judgment. We stop competing and start uplifting. Purpose creates community. It turns isolation into belonging. Sometimes our purpose is found in service, in using our pain to help others feel less alone. Sometimes it's found in creativity, in turning our heartbreak into art, our silence into poetry. Sometimes it's in leadership, guiding others through the very storms we've survived. And sometimes it's simply in presence, in being fully here, fully alive, even with all our messiness. The choice between pain and purpose is not made once. It is made over and over, every single day. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, in the middle of the night when doubts creep in the small decisions that slowly shape the course of our lives. And each time we choose purpose, we reclaim a piece of ourselves. We are not defined by what broke us. We are defined by what we build from the broken pieces. We are not meant to be untouched by pain. We are meant to be transformed by it, not hardened, but awakened. Not diminished, but deepened, and through that transformation we find the reason we're still here, the reason we still fight, the reason we still hope, the reason we still rise.